Hello, everyone, and welcome to Blogging Theology. And today I am delighted to talk again to Justin Parrott. You're most welcome, sir. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Thanks for having me.
It's great to have you back. And just as a reminder, everyone, Justin is the Associate Librarian for Middle East Studies at New York University. And he was instructor of Islamic Creed for Mishka University from 2022 to 2024. Now, last month, the FBI in America investigated a Texas imam accused of making explicit videos with minors. These serious accusations are just the latest in a long history of scandals that have shocked many in the American Muslim community. People are asking why popular Muslim figures facing serious allegations seem to escape accountability. And in response, Justin has very recently published a call to action by American Muslims. And the article is titled, "Ensuring the Safety of Our Communities, a Call for Immediate Corrective Action from American Muslim Organizations." And I'll link to this in the description below. It's definitely worth reading. So Justin, what motivated you particularly to write this? What are the main issues for you?
Yes, so I'll begin by stating the complaint, the criminal complaint, again, Imam Wissam Sharif. I have read that, and I would recommend that any concerned adult read that who is able to stomach the charges that were brought against him and the evidence that was found by the police. It's so heinous, there's really no words to describe it. Not only did he hurt a little girl, which is tragic, but he exploited the religion to do that. So he lied about the religion. He told them that these criminal actions would get them closer to Allah, and he did all, he exploited his position as a trusted imam, as having a kind of a celebrity status, to have access to this little girl and to the other parties that were involved in this very heinous way. And so I'm not the only commentator who has pointed out that these actions are not just criminals and not just sins, and that he wasn't just a weak person who committed a sin. He actually lied about the religion in a very terrible way. And there's a scholarly opinion out there that this is kufr. This is an act of unbelief that takes somebody out of Islam for somebody to lie about the religion like this. So there are other people who have said that. And so when I finally stomached the will to be able to read this criminal complaint, it was very upsetting to me, and it inspired me to write this piece because we need policies in place, and we need procedures, and we need regulations that not just hold people accountable after the fact, but to eliminate the opportunities for criminal actors to have access to children specifically, but also to women. And then there's also ways that men are victimized. So everybody needs to be protected, but we need strong policies in place. And that's what I put forward in the article. There were 4 points that were mentioned in the article. And that was that men and women who are unmarried shouldn't be alone together in enclosed spaces or having electronic communications. Adults and children should not be alone together in enclosed spaces and have electronic communication among themselves. And there's a basis for that in our legal heritage that I brought forth, and that I think has been neglected and needs to be revived and then codified into our administrative documents and our governance documents of our Islamic centers and our masajid and other places, that there are these rules in place where we know it's taboo for a man and a woman who are unmarried to meet alone together, even if they're not doing anything, because it just brings up suspicion of adultery. And in the same way, it needs to be taboo for an adult to be alone with a child who is not their own, because of the ways that a child can be abused like that and all of the horrible things that can come out of that. And there were two, and that's the main concern of why I wanted to talk to you today. I did have 2 other points in the article that I think we should be prohibiting unlicensed psychotherapy by imams, and we should be prohibiting secret marriage officiated or entered into by imams because of the dubious legal nature of that, and that it being another opportunity for abusers. And so the point really I want to drive home, not only the policies, but that this person was an imam. This person was a Quran teacher who taught thousands of people. Yeah. And from the charges that are brought against him and the evidence that was collected against him, it looks like he didn't believe any of it. Oh. And he just exploited his position to have access to children and have access to women, and to do these horrible crimes against people. So
I'm just amazed at this. I mean, you correctly point out the Islamic teaching, and you quote a hadith in your article where Muhammad, upon whom be peace, said, "Whoever has faith in Allah and the last day, let him not be secluded with an unrelated woman without her guardian, lest Satan be the third among them." Now, this is such a basic teaching in Islam. It's one of the great glories of Islam, in my opinion, having come from a Christian background where there's no such teaching at all. You know, it's a free for all, and you get the numerous examples of institutionalized abuse of Catholic priests and children are legion and extremely well publicized. But Islam has these safeguards built in, actually, unlike Catholicism. Unfortunately, maybe that would change, or has changed, but it's still a massive problem. But why routinely? Because this guy you mentioned in Texas, he wasn't just a lone individual. He was part of, I won't mention the names that were, you can if you wish, but the Islamic organizations he was a part of, the masjid he was a part of. Why weren't these prohibitions of private, encounters between men and women in the workplace? Why weren't these prohibitions just routinely implemented anyway? It's part of the sunnah of the Prophet. It's not some kind of, oh, wow, we got to think up some new policies here. This should be routine, normative Islamic practice, it seems to me anyway. And yet there was clearly a systemic failure here. And that's what shocked me. I was generally surprised by that. Why has there been this systemic failure?
That's a great question. And to be fair to the Institute, and I don't want to criticize them too harshly, there was an institutional failure, and he had violated a number of their policies. And so they do have those policies on the book. But my question to them and to all Islamic organizations are, what complaints went unheard and what signs were there that were not followed up on? Because this probably wasn't his first transgression, and it probably wasn't the first sign that there was something deeply wrong with this person, that this person probably has antisocial personality disorder. And I know we're not allowed to diagnose at a distance, but that his behavior seems to be, to qualify as that. And so he had to have, the mask had to slip off at some point. And did somebody see that and not do anything? And so I would suggest to the Institute that they would do a forensic audit of everything that they knew about this person. How was he even hired in the first place when he was holding this darkness in his heart the whole time? How did he get so far? How did he have almost a celebrity status that he hid behind and exploited? Wow. And nobody saw anything, and there were no signs or anything like that. So the Institute needs to audit themselves, do a forensic audit, and see where signs missed, where were complaints missed. And that's my advice to them. And that's the kind of bold action that we need from them and from other institutes where these things are going to happen. I think that's a good start, but surely there are other things as well. Correct me if I'm wrong. In the United States, that in the Muslim community, there are no national organizations that have a formal process where people can submit an allegation against a Muslim leader, and it would be investigated. So people may be uncomfortable about filing a complaint against their local imam. If they're part of the masjid itself, they may feel vulnerable. They may feel there may be repercussions. They may be exposed for complaining.
They may not be taken seriously, whatever. There were all sorts of legitimate concerns about making a local complaint about a local person when you're involved in that area. But if there's a national organization which is geographically distant from the situation, they might have more confidence in its ability to act in a disinterested way. So, but there are no national organizations. Is that right in the US? I mean,
not that I'm aware of. Not one that would have the reach to be able to really make a difference where it counts. But the problem that you bring up is that it may be difficult to file a complaint locally with this masjid or this Islamic center, especially if the imam is popular, especially if the imam has celebrity status and is a good fundraiser. And there's a lot of pressure for the board not to investigate and to cover it up, just let it blow over and then just hope it doesn't explode. So, there's a lot of pressure like that. I mean, and I understand there's also reasons why Muslims wouldn't want to go to the police and tell the police that somebody is doing something criminal. And that's what, in fact, happened in this case. And that's why he was caught, actually, because it was, in fact, his wife or somebody who was identified as his wife in the complaint was the one who tipped off the police. And then they found his phone and then other phones. And then they just got a ton of evidence against him, enough to charge him with multiple things.
Amazing.
So I don't have the backing to make a national organization. I don't know that that's even possible. And there's a lot of pressure against that. So I don't think that's going to happen. But my plan of what I thought was possible is that, well, we should pressure these masajid and Islamic centers and to do it in a way that conveys the urgency of the situation and not to be too confrontational or forceful about it. I'm still thinking that through, but these policies do need to be implemented. There needs to be a culture where children are viewed as the vulnerable people that they are, and that they're not allowed to be left in the care of a strange adult who may or may not have their best interests at heart. And so I think what I thought was at least possible is not necessarily that we have a national investigative body. I don't know if anybody can mount the credibility to do that. But what we can do is that these Islamic centers should get on board with policies that codify these things into their governing documents. And in particular, the point about children. And I put some quotes in there to show that these are not like new ideas that I'm coming up with. And so the sexual molestation of minors was something that was condemned in the earliest generations of Islam. And then there was jurisprudence that was developed. Imam Shafi'i, rahimahullah, for example, prohibited adults from looking at the faces of children who did not have beards, so prepubescent children, whether or not they were sexually tempted by them, whether or not they looked with passion or not. They just were told to lower their gaze in the same way that men are supposed to lower their gaze towards women and women are supposed to lower their gaze towards men. As a protective measure, they also had this law, this rule with regards to children. And that rule needs to be more popular. It needs to be more widely understood and respected. And it needs to be put into the governing documents of the masajid and the Islamic centers. And that's what my article is calling to, is for that step to at least be taken. And then there's more that has to be done, but that's what I think is reasonable at this point.
Now, there's a third policy recommendation you make in your article, which I've said is titled "Ensuring the Safety of All Our Communities, a Call for Immediate Corrective Action from American Muslim Organizations." And the third policy recommendation is basically the prohibition of unlicensed psychotherapy or counseling by imams. And effective immediately, you say the masjid prohibits all imams and staff from conducting psychotherapy services, even if they receive payment for such services, unless they hold the appropriate professional license and qualifications recognized by governing regulatory or bodies. Now, I mean, far from me to question this, but it just occurred to me that it sounds very sensible and plausible. But is there, I mean, this is going to areas which we might not want to talk about, I don't know. But in certain contexts in the West, shall we say, to gain a therapist or any kind of license, you have to sign up to a whole bunch of policies on, all sorts of the usual issues, shall we say, which might be incompatible with Islam. And I mean, what I'm trying to say is it's not necessarily a straightforward, trouble-free process for Muslims who are required to perhaps to assent to certain lifestyle choices or whatever to get that accreditation, to get that license, to get those qualifications. And it just occurred to me that might be it might be problematic for that reason. That's all.
Yeah, now this is the more challenging rule, and the reason I put it in there is because I am concerned that there are imams who have achieved this celebrity status, like Imam Wissam had, and then they use that to charge people for counseling and for life coaching and for psychotherapy and treating depression and illness and other kinds of things that they're not actually qualified to do. Because in my opinion, psychotherapy is medicine. It has a scientific component and it has a religious component, and the imams can provide the religious component. And that's a very important part of medicine. We don't want to take that out of medicine, but psychotherapy, especially when you're talking about schizophrenia and bipolar disorder and other like complex mental disorders that people are having, those people need to be referred to specialists who have studied these things and are qualified to take those things on. And I was also concerned because I know people personally who have complained to me that they went to this imam and they went for marriage counseling and they paid hundreds of dollars per hour to have marriage counseling and they got really bad advice and then blew up their marriage. I know more than one person that has happened to. So that's very tragic for me because to hear those stories, and I don't want imams to hide behind their celebrity status, because the point here we need to make is that imams are not omni experts. Okay, they can't be experts on everything. They can be expert. You can't even be an expert on all the Islamic sciences. You have to specialize in something. So imams can't be everything to everyone. And psychotherapy is a very developed discipline, and it's dealing with very concrete problems. And the licensure makes sure that the person providing psychotherapy or marriage counseling or whatever is adhering to a code of ethics. And it also, and it's not easy to sue a psychotherapist, but they are liable for malpractice if they in fact did something against the code of ethics. Right. So if somebody's offering psychotherapy without a license and they're charging, then there's no protection in that regard for the people. So this is an idea that I had, and I just wanted to get the ball rolling with it. But
of course,
it's a difficult one, and it's something that I think we need to be talking about over the long term. The immediate thing for me, though, is the protection of children, and for imams not to be able to hide behind their celebrity status to commit horrific crimes like this, or whether it's stealing or anything else, or abusing children, abusing women. There's all kinds of things, because sociopaths, people with antisocial personality disorder, they are drawn towards positions of authority, positions that give them access, positions that give them prestige in the community, and then they use that to exploit and victimize people. And that's exactly what Imam Wissam did. And there are these people out there that are like that, and we need laws in place to protect our community from such kinds of people as him.
But there are laws already, though. There are laws already in the United States.
What I mean is rules that are in the governing documents of Masajid, because they have bylaws, they have a board, they have procedures and everything like that. So our rules that we use to govern ourselves in our centers internally, not the laws of the nation per se, but the internal laws, the self-governing laws that we have, those need to be compatible with this protection of children, and they need to be stronger than they are now.
Right. Okay. I noticed on a slightly different subject, policy number 4, you say, this is your recommendation, I guess, prohibition of imams from officiating or entering into secret marriages. Now, I didn't know this was a problem. I didn't know this was a thing. What's the backstory on that? Why on earth are people entering into secret marriages in the first place in America? What's the problem?
So I'll give you my understanding. Sheikh Muhammad Akram al-Nadwi has an article about this on Muslim Matters that he wrote back in 2017, I believe, and he deals with the subject very well. But the problem that I see, and I've heard this from many people in the community, is that they've been tricked into secret marriages, and then it blows up the first family, or it blows up the children. You know, it can be a very harmful thing, and these are especially true for imams who are traveling in between countries and everything. They get a second wife, and then that they see, and the first wife doesn't know about it, and the children don't know about it. There's so many problems with that. The problem is that in the Islamic legal heritage, that there are two opinions. In my opinion, is that a secret marriage is an act of adultery, and that is the opinion of Imam Malik, rahimahullah, and it's well established. And I think he has a stronger opinion because he has the ayah in the Quran, its explanation, and there are 3 hadith that go with it that are all hasan, that are all good. So I think he has a very strong opinion about that. But the other scholars said that, well, if marriage is contracted in secret, but it has permissions of the guardians and it has 2 witnesses, then it's legally permissible, but it's makruh, it's discouraged, even hated, is what that word means. And so they wouldn't annul the marriage and they wouldn't consider adultery, but they would consider it something that's immoral. And there's a misunderstanding out there in the community, especially among men who were upset with me when I started talking about this, is that they think, oh, secret marriage is halal. Well, it's not halal, it's makruh at best. Or it's zina and adultery and fornication and prostitution, which other scholars have said that it is. And so why would an imam who's supposed to be leading us be involved in this type of activity in the first place? They're supposed to be dignified and above that. And in Islam, we're supposed to make barriers between ourselves and the haram. That's the famous hadith that says that. And so when somebody's engaging in secret marriage, they're getting up very close to the haram, if not already in the haram. And it just doesn't make sense that you have a marriage and 2 people witness it, but then they don't tell anybody. There's so many problems with that. And the thing is, it does occur. And there are women who are victimized by it, and there are children who are victimized by it. And it's not fair to them. And I wanted to bring this out because I was thinking about the different areas in which a predator could enter and victimize people. And this is one of the loopholes that they could exploit in the fiqh, in the Islamic law, where they can make this specious argument that this is a halal relationship and it's fine because I'm in a foreign country, and, you know, they justify it with, you know, because all of these kinds of means. And it's just really something that is above any imam ever doing ever for any reason. And it does happen. And but because of the nature of it being a secret, we don't have data upon it, but there are plenty of stories out there. And there was enough stories out there that Sheikh Nadwi wrote an article about it. And that our jurists have talked about it since for the last 1,000 years, right?
Yeah. And you quote a hadith in your article. The Messenger of Allah, peace be upon him, said, "Announce this marriage publicly, conduct it in the masjid, and strike the drums for it." Sunan al-Tirmidhi. I like the strike the drums for it. I wasn't familiar with that, but no, the requirement that it should be public is clearly there in the hadith, which is so that was quite nice. So those are the many of the recommendations you have. I think that the last thing I want to ask you really is about the relationship between Muslims and wider civil society in the United States. And this is probably quite similar throughout the West, really, in terms of the civil society, the law enforcement and the police and so on. Because the danger here, and this is something the Catholic Church really came unstuck about when it decided to investigate its priests who were abusing children on an industrial scale. I mean, it really was extraordinary. These institutionalized celibate males basically having complete access to children and young people without any kind of boundaries or safeguarding at all. I mean, that's changing or has changed, but nevertheless, it was a huge problem. But the church attempted for some very long time to sort it out in-house, to hush up the thing. We've moved this priest from his parish to another parish, and hopefully it'll be okay there. And then it continued there and all this stuff. So there was no accountability publicly. The police weren't involved. It was just the bishops. People called it a cover-up. And of course, it was a cover-up. people weren't brought to justice. They're raping children and stuff. I mean, it was
Right.
extremely serious stuff.
Yeah.
Extremely serious stuff. The reason I mention all that, I'm not saying in any way, of course, that masjids are involved in this kind of industrial scale abuse, because the whole dynamics are very different. I mean, we don't have a celibate clergy. We don't have clergy anyway. But celibacy is not a thing in Islam. So you're supposed to have a full relationship with one spouse. But is there not a danger that Muslims then will have these rules, these internal laws, as you call them, but not involve the police, the FBI, law enforcement, wider civil society? Because hey, we are Muslims, and we deal with these amongst Muslims. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It becomes, and thus it really is compromised, because there's no transparency really, because we're all members of civil society. We're not a separate community like the Essenes by the Dead Sea. We don't live literally elsewhere. We live in communities. So is that not an issue as well?
Yeah. So, I mean, I do mention in the policy paper that criminal charges should be brought when appropriate. And so I'm not against bringing in the police, especially if there's a crime that has been committed. And like I said before, there's a lot of pressure for organizations, religious organizations, especially Muslims, to keep things in-house and to cover it up and to just let it blow over, because there's fundraising involved and there's public image, and the Islamophobes are going to jump on it, which they have done with the Imam Wassam thing. So there's a lot of pressure to do that, but I don't think it should be, I don't think there should be a problem going to the police if the masjid board is not going to do anything. And so if the masjid board is not doing their job, then you have to bring the police by necessity. And if there's somebody who is a creep and who hasn't done anything criminal but has broken policies like flirting with children and getting children alone, or flirting with other women or anything like that, then they need to be fired. And then they should be told, other people should be told that this imam was fired because he broke these different policies, and there should be a very harsh punishment for these imams who exploit their position to do that, even if they haven't done anything criminal. But when it gets to the level of criminality, I think we do need to call the police, and I do think it is an obligation, and that's something that we do out of necessity, and it's not something that we would like to do that, or that would be the first thing that we want to do. But when crimes are committed, people shouldn't escape the law, and this definitely shouldn't be allowed to go back to a foreign country where they might have people who protect them. Which there's allegations out there that there was that exact thing happened, that there were children that were victimized and the board covered it up, and then the person escaped back to their home country to victimize somebody else. And that's something that we don't want to do. So I think we need to apply the appropriate amount of pressure on the masajid board to be able to do the right things, and that they do need to get the law involved when a crime has been in fact committed, and that imams who are found to have broken these policies and broken these taboos and have done other types of things, even when it doesn't reach the level of criminality, they need to be harshly punished, and they need to not be able to get a job as an imam somewhere else to do the same thing. Right.
I've noticed the Christian churches, which I say have a slightly more a different dynamic, a different reasons for the systemic abuse that's happened on an extraordinary global scale. But nevertheless, they have instituted, like the Church of England, the Catholic Church, have instituted safeguarding policies, basically to promote the welfare of children and young people in the church. And very often, I know the Catholic Church does it. They have designated safeguarding individuals, so people whose role it is in the church, and they're not clergy, they're not deacons, they're not bishops, they're independent of that, although they obviously are Catholics. But they are people whose responsibility is to that they're a safe person one can go to report abuse. I don't think you mentioned that in your, but is there not a case for adopting some best practice from other religious communities who have been through this before on a much bigger scale?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is a problem. It's not just Muslims, and so let's be clear. It's other religions too. It's secular institutions. There's teachers doing this to their students in school, and we need to look at other policies and other institutions who have tackled this in a successful way and have ideally have some data-driven backing behind their policies. That when they implemented these policies, then the number of incidents has gone down in a measured way. And so, yeah, I think we can use because we're talking about something that's sort of just a human problem.
Mm-hmm.
And Christians, I know there's Christian churches that have gone on and ahead of it, and we can look at their policies, and teacher in schools, private schools. There's a lot of things that we could look at. My initial paper was sort of laying the foundation for getting this conversation started and getting these things into the documents, is because I feel that it is a matter of urgency, that there's kids out there that are going to be harmed if we don't take proactive steps to hurt them, and not on a mass scale, I'm saying, but it's going to happen, and we need to it's our duty to them to protect them. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I think we can use the Christian churches that have gone out ahead of it as models, and also private schools. And then there's other institutions where they have dealt with this exact problem. Yeah. And we can model those things and adapt them to our setting, but we cannot be complacent. I think we need to have a sense of urgency about this, because what I haven't had a chance to talk about yet is the terrible effects of this type of abuse on children, and it sets them up for a lifetime of suffering. Mm. And it's not just the initial incident that is traumatic, it's that incident will follow them for the rest of their life. It causes irreparable damage to their sexual development. It scars them in a way that very few things could. And it's associated in the scientific literature with sexual dysfunction, anxiety disorder, depression, suicide. All of that is very clear correlation. And there's some correlations with other things too, but those are definitely well established in the scientific literature. And that's why I want to have a sense of urgency, and I want to put pressure on people in an appropriate amount to get something down now and start taking steps to protect children, because this is going to happen if we don't take proactive steps, because there are predators in the community who will exploit their positions, whether they're imam or not, or whether they're just a person in the masjid. There's people who come into the masjid with the intention of sexually exploiting minors, and there's a very few people that do that, but those people are out there, and there needs to be strong rules in place that they just don't have an opportunity to do this. And it's our duty to our children to make sure that happens. And whether we draw off of a Christian experience or a secular experience or whatever we need to do to develop these policies and to make them very strong, and just to close all avenues of abuse that we can. That's our duty as Muslims.
Yeah, no, well said. I do commend you for your courageous stance here in calling for these important corrective actions for the American Muslim community. And the article you've written is on the Muslim Matters website, muslimmatters.org. I'll link to it in the description below. The article is called Ensuring the Safety of Our Communities, a call for immediate corrective action from American Muslim organizations, are published just very recently, November the 22nd, 2024, on the Muslim Matters website. And there's links to other relevant documents and articles in your piece. So it's well worth reading. So thank you very much. Was there anything you want to say in conclusion?
Yeah, the last thing is that I've set up a website, savemuslimkids.com, and I'm going to try to collect endorsements of these policies. I'm going to collect people who agree with me on the urgency of dealing with this problem, and get their endorsements in writing, and to contact masajid and Islamic centers and to ask them, what are they doing to protect children? Are they willing to endorse this policy statement? And just to do whatever I can to provide resources, because this is something that we have to develop, and I think we need to do it very soon, as quickly as we can. And that's going to be the central point for sort of sharing ideas and building a coalition to be able to protect our kids from those people that are out there.
Great. Well, thank you very much indeed, Justin, for your time and your excellent work. Inshallah, it will be a great success and have the necessary impact that it sorely needs in our world. So thank you very much.
Thank you.